I have a question now. I want to go back to my dad's era. And I've been thinking about this. Trey Lance is the backup now. He's going to be the franchise quarterback for a while in this team, whether he's successful or not. And he's going to be a totally different person when he has that kind of scrutiny and power and stardom. But for now, he's the backup, 21. I remember Colin Kaepernick when he was a backup. He was way different than when he was the starter. What were Joe Montana and Steve Young like when they were backups on the 49ers?
Okay, we'll start with Joe. You have to remember that Joe is very quiet. He doesn't put himself out there that much, which is probably a very good trait in a teammate. You don't want to put down teammates. He was behind Steve DeBerg. I know early on. I bet he understood that he was a better talent, that he was a better quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But Joe would have been quiet. He would have followed the lead of Bill Walsh, and he would have respected protocol. That's absolutely who Joe was. I've told you before, the only thing I ever got from Joe on that, and this is when Joe was very young, he said, whenever we go out to practice, Steve DeBerg has to have the ball first. He has to grab the ball first. And I'm trying
as if that proves something, right?
Yes.
The pecking order.
A pecking order. And
not performance, not talent. Who has the ball first?
Who has the ball first? And I think that's what Joe meant.
Yeah.
Although it's a very interesting thing to say. What did he mean? He didn't deserve the ball, or why act like that?
That's the competition he can win.
Maybe that's what he meant.
He can't beat me in practice. He can't play football better than me, but he can get the ball first.
Okay. Well, that's what Joe did say to me one time.
Like it's petty.
It's petty. Yes.
It's petty.
Yeah. So there was that. Now, Steve was a backup for a long time to Joe. I think that's much more complicated. First of all, I want to say neither Joe nor Steve ever said a bad thing about the other one to me. Ever. I don't know that they like each other very much, but they were always very respectful. For example, I once asked Joe, how do you feel about Steve? And this was years, when we were all retired. They were retired. He said, I treat him with the respect I would treat any former teammate, which is
wow,
a very interesting thing to say. That's what Joe certainly said to me about Steve. Steve never, ever put down Joe. And in Steve's book, which, by the way, Steve's autobiography is one hell of a read. I don't usually like sports books, but this one I loved. He is only respectful of Joe. Only. He said he admired him. On the other hand, I think he thought he should have been the starter sooner.
Yep.
And you know what? God love him.
Yeah.
He's supposed to think that.
He waited until his 30s.
Even though he's in Montana, he's supposed to think that.
Yeah.
In addition, in his book, he indicates that he came to the team because Bill Walsh told him that Joe was on his last legs and Steve would soon be the quarterback because Joe couldn't do it that much longer. And Steve said the first day of practice, Joe ran out to the field. He was throwing passes. He said, he didn't look on his last legs to me. He looked pretty great to me. So I think the frustration that Steve felt was not toward Joe. It was toward Bill. Because I think Bill, everybody knows I like Bill. Bill had about 100 different personalities, and he could be very wily and not nice. And I think Steve, at a certain level, felt he got sold a bill of goods.
Yeah. It's interesting. I want to talk about what you said about Bill real quick. He had 1 million personalities. That seems to be a very important attribute for a coach, the chameleon aspect. You need a lot of different personalities. And what was the real Bill Walsh like? Hard to say, right?
Oh, boy. There were so many layers.
So many personalities.
So many personalities.
That's one difference between him and Kyle Shanahan real quick. Kyle is so right there. There's one personality with Kyle Shanahan, and he doesn't conceal it. It's a big difference between them.
Good. With Bill, here's the thing with Bill. And I'll tell you who else was like that. Don Nelson. They had a lot in common. Those two. They knew how to work you.
Robert Saleh too. God love him.
Well, I don't know Saleh, but I believe you. But Bill, for example, Bill knew that I was a boxing guy.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill was too.
Mm-hmm.
He knew every bit as much as I did and more because he was older and he had seen more. But he was a serious boxing guy. Well, if we had an argument or he didn't like something I wrote, the next time I saw him, he'd be talking to me about Sugar Ray Robinson. Hey, Lowell, what about this fight? And it was his way of breaking the tension. Okay.
Right.
But he wouldn't do that with Ira Miller. He would have had something else, maybe restaurants or NFL history.
Whatever.
With Ira,
or college football.
Or college football. So what I want to say is, what we used to have in the library, they don't have them anymore, the card catalog, he had a card catalog in his head. I work Lowell this way. I work Ira this way.
Yes. And it's like, he doesn't have to argue with you about what you wrote. He has to get you on his side.
Absolutely.
So Lowell, let's talk about Sugar Ray Robinson. You're like, man, he's a good guy. He's not even mad at what I wrote. We can relate. Maybe I'll go easier on Bill next time. I'll see it from his perspective. And that's what certain guys are really good at. Bill was good at it. And Saleh can do it.
Don Nelson was good at that too. So with Bill, I was always very cautious. Yes. We didn't become closer until he retired, because then he didn't have much to gain from me. And then more of his personality came out. Bill was not an affectionate person, but he could, he was not affectionate.
Right.
But he was needy.
Needed affection.
He was needy, and I didn't know that when he was the coach. He was really needy, Iggy. And that he used to call me a lot. And just so I would tell him things were okay.
Is that what drove him?
Yes.
Because it doesn't seem like he was particularly happy.
I don't feel he was a happy person. Not like you and I are.
No.
He was not a giggler.
Brooding on his success. He was brooding over it, right?
Yes. And brooding all the times in his life, he got screwed. And what he did tell me was that what drove him as a coach was feeling that he would fail, that he was a failure. And he would feel that after a game, maybe till Wednesday. And then he would have to overcome that so he could do well against Green Bay on Sunday. So his whole professional life was feeling worthless and overcoming it in weekly cycles. That was, I did not understand that, but that was much more who he was than the boxing fan that Lowell saw when I was a writer.
So let me take it back to the original topic, what Joe Montana and Steve Young were like as backups. So it seemed like what I heard you say is they were respectful about it. They put in their time, but privately they both felt that they were better and wanted to prove it. And I mean, that's what I always sensed from Colin Kaepernick. He was very quiet around the facility. He didn't need to talk to people or prove it. He just felt every time he was on the practice field, he threw better, he moved better, he looked better, all of it. And then he would get he had a very confident air about him, even when he was silent and not a main member of the team. And I'm imagining Trey Lance has looked at Jimmy Garoppolo and it's like, you can't throw like me. You can't move like me. You can't relate like me. I'm going to take this from you, and it's not going to take that long. So it's interesting to see these young guys start their road ahead.
Yes, I love the way you brought it back. That was very interesting what you just did. And so you're comparing Trey Lance to maybe how Steve privately felt and Joe privately felt. But actually, he's almost publicly feeling it.
Yes. I remember Kaepernick, before he was a starter, he would just walk around with earphones on, never talk to anyone. And I think his attitude was, it's going to be my team soon. I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting. I'm doing all the work I need to do, but this is boring. It's going to be my team, and I'm just passing the time. Very confident.
Yes, I would give Kaepernick credit. He had the bearing and the demeanor of a starting quarterback.
Yeah. When he was 24, 25, he was just an incredible athlete. Incredible athlete. He was in the best shape of anyone on the team. He was like 235 pounds. He was an amazing athlete. Then he became vegan and lost about 20 pounds and had a bunch of surgeries. It wasn't quite the same. I think that's the main reason. Anyway, I don't talk about him. But I swear, if he was 235 pounds looking like he used to look, teams would have him in the way they have Tim Tebow, because Tim Tebow's still in great shape. Michael Jolly says, honestly, if the Niners wanted to keep Jimmy G at quarterback, they would have drafted Pitts and given him weapons. It's Lance's team from week one. That's how I feel. But the Niners have so many mixed messages, it's really hard to decide where they're coming from and what their plan is. Do you have a good idea of what the Niners' plan is here, Dad?
No, I don't.
No.
All I know is I've bet a $50 bottle of wine on it. And Iggy, I'm happy to lose that bottle of wine.
But you haven't lost yet, and there's no reason to give up.